Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Regional Housing Council meeting for Thurston County. Let's go ahead and do some introductions. Hang on just a second. I want to get myself back where I can see you. Okay, so let's just do a quick check-in and make sure we know who is here, and then we can check in on the agenda and move forward. So let's good timing because Hutch got here just in time for introductions. Welcome, sir.
Who, me?
No, you not yet, but your timing is perfect. We're just about to start. So let's go ahead and start with the city of Lacey. Tell us who's here from Lacey.
All right. Well, I'm Carolyn Cox representing Lacey City Council, and we have our alternate,
Lenny Greenstein, also Lacey City Council.
and who else do we got here? Well, we have Kelly Adams for sure.
Rick just popped in. Hi, Rick.
Okay, I'm Rick.
Okay, thank you, Lacey. Let's hear from Tumwater. Who all's here?
Hi, Michael
I'm Joan
Altauser, Tumwater City Council.
Joan Cathey, Tumwater City Council.
John Doan, Tumwater City Administrator.
Brad Bedard, Tumwater Planning Manager.
Great. And I'll just note that Scott Spence joined us. We already did Lacey introductions. Welcome, Scott. And Olympia, I'm Jim Cooper. Councilmember Rollins passes on her regrets. She's not feeling well this evening because of the smoke. Keith?
Stahley, Assistant City Manager with the City of Olympia.
Great. And Thurston County.
Yep, John Hutchings, and I see County Manager Ramiro Chavez. I also see Keylee Marineau. Yay. Do I see Tom Webster? No. Oh, yeah, right there. Yep, got Tom. And I don't know if Shelly's here or she's coming. I have no idea.
Okay, great. Well, we'll check in with her if she shows up. And I'll just point out that, so we'll get an update on the ILA, but we decided to go ahead and act as though we have an interlocal agreement in place. And so we are performing with this as a public meeting. And so if you look at your participants tab, you can see that there is also attendees from the public and from some of our partner organizations that are chiming in. So I just want to make sure that you know that. Kelly, can you promote Mayor Foster to panelist? There we go. And go ahead, Keylee, you have a comment?
I just wanted to make sure that for the record that Jacinda Stelchis is also here from Thurston County.
Great, thank you. And then welcome, Mayor Foster. We're just wrapping up introduction, so we have you on the record.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. So is everybody okay with the agenda as it stands or as it's presented? Okay, seeing nods, we have an agenda. So that takes us to an approval of the minutes from our last meeting. They came in about an hour ago. So if you haven't had a chance to look at them, we can, we can wait and do this next month. But if you have, I'm open to a motion to approve the minutes.
I had the chance to read them and I moved to approve them.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any amendments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, so that takes us to the status of our interlocal agreement. Let's go ahead and hear from Tom.
All right, good evening, everyone. So hopefully a quick update tonight. We have heard many of your, I think all of the jurisdictions on the call have passed the interlocal agreement. So that includes Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey, the City of Elm, and Thurston County have all passed the interlocal agreement. We have reached out. I've heard from the mayor of Rainier. They discussed the interlocal agreement at their council meeting this month, but they're only meeting once a month, so they have it scheduled for their October meeting to approve the ILA in October. I have reached out a couple different times, including this morning, to Mayor Carr in Bucota, but have not heard from him yet on the status of where Bucota is regarding the ILA. So I will continue to try to reach out to him and follow up on that status. Tenino, I did hear from Tenino that that the mayor was going to reach out directly to our commissioners to discuss the ILA. So I have not had a discussion with Tenino, so I don't know exactly where their status is. So I don't know if Ramiro or Commissioner Hutchings has an update on Tenino.
My update is the mayor reached out to me yesterday, I think it was yesterday morning, to talk, and I have not had any chance to talk with him in the last 2 days. So tomorrow morning I'll be calling him.
Okay.
So based on some discussions, because everyone's working remotely and getting document signatures is difficult, we were advised it was best to wait until everyone's approved and then send out the actual document verse to use DocuSign to get all the necessary documents. So the document has not been signed. We'll wait until hopefully October after Rainier passes, and hopefully all the other jurisdictions will pass by that time to formally sign the document. So that's the current status as I know it.
Great. Any questions about the ILA? Go ahead, Carolyn.
Well, not about the ILA, but if we're not quite formal yet, I guess that begs the question of whether we're really ready to have elections or not. The next item.
Yeah, so I mean, I could go either way. I talked to Tom and we kind of just, we think we should just act as though this organization is formed, and we do have the representation from the South County cities and the appointees. So I would go with what the members want to do. It feels okay to me to go forward, given that most of us have signed on, but I'm happy we can wait. It's no problem. John?
We could do a tentative election pending, if it makes more, people feel more comfortable.
Oh yeah, like, so the motion would, or the nominations would be to assume the chair once the interlocal agreement is complete at the first formal meeting under the ILA. Okay. Are you okay with that, Carolyn?
Yeah, I was really kind of hoping for a little bit more legal guidance from Tom and our city managers, just to make sure we're starting this out. I just want to make sure we're doing this well and dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
Scott,
I have a
go ahead.
question.
Oh, just a sec, Joan. Go ahead, Scott.
What, again, it's not necessarily legal advice, but from a practical matter, if you do your vote, I think you can always reaffirm it once the ILA is established. That would then make it official. That'd be just a good way to ensure there's no dispute in the future.
Okay.
Mayor Foster, I see you nodding. Okay. Sorry, Joan, go ahead with your question.
Okay,
Yes.
I have a question about this. I am confused about why we're even doing this right now, because it will be for only 3 months. Because according to our bylaws and so forth, we have annual elections, and we have those annual elections after each jurisdiction has made their or reaffirmed their appointment of people to this committee. So if we're going to go ahead and do it now, whoever is going to be in this position is simply, as far as I can tell and read everything, they're in this position until either January or February, whichever day, whichever month RHC decides every single year that that's when they're going to have their yearly elections. So I'm wondering if maybe we wait. I mean, what is going to change if we do this tonight? And I mean, to me, it seems like a waste of time to do it now and then do it all over again in the first of the year with maybe new people or whatever. So just a comment and an observation.
Yeah, and I agree with you that the term would be until the annual elections in 2021, based on the ILA. And then I also think that, we don't have to do it tonight, but once we have a final ILA, we have to have a chair until the next election, as I read it. So, Michael, you haven't spoken as a member.
We have a chair. We have a chair. I don't understand this deal. We have it We have a chair and a vice chair. How is signing this ILA or getting this done? Maybe it won't even be till November, and there's just a month until we're into the, I don't know if we've decided whether we're having our elections in January or February, but I don't understand the purpose here of doing this for 1 to 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to also weigh in, and I think to Carolyn's point, I think part of this is that now we're becoming a formal group. We're formalizing, everything's becoming official. This is a publicly noticed meeting that's being recorded, that'll be made available. We're really taking those steps of making this organization a formal interlocal governing body. And as such, I think it's prudent that we have to have a chair and a vice chair in order to call the meetings, to facilitate and organize those. And Jim and Carolyn, you've been doing a pretty great job as chair and vice chair, but now that we are sort of taking that next step and becoming more formal, I do think that it's prudent that we also take that step just for transparency purposes to show that, yeah, we have elected a chair and a vice chair, even though knowing that we might have to do the same thing, or probably do have to do the same thing 3 months from now. I think it's just part of crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and might take us, 5 minutes or whatever, or maybe a little bit longer, but it's on the agenda. And so I'd be fine with proceeding today.
But we don't have it signed, Michael. We do not have an ILA signed and so forth. We're still operating under what I think has been a good way of operating, with a chair and a vice chair and whatever. And this is not going to be signed for another month or so. So I guess I'm wondering about the whole thing, and then wondering why we need to do it tonight.
So I think to expedite this, I'm going to ask the members to raise their hand if they would like to do a chair election now, or wait until the final signatures are in. So if you'd like to do a chair election now, raise your hand.
So.
Okay. So with that, and to clarify, so this chair election will be for the remainder of the 2020 term until the elections that happen in 2021, and it will be reaffirmed upon the finals, after the first meeting after the final signatures, to Michael's point, so that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And then I would also note that based on the ILA, it requires that one of the 2 positions be from the lead agency, which in this case currently is Thurston County. And so what I'll do is I'll open nominations for the chair, and then we'll move to the vice chair, realizing that depending on what happens with the first step, the second step, one of them has to involve a county commissioner. So everybody okay with that?
Jim, can I ask about the word you used? We are going to then, at the beginning of next year, we are going to reaffirm these positions, or we are going to have these people serve until the 2021 elections, then we're going to elect again.
We will elect again in 2021, and the first meeting after the signatures, we will take a quick vote to reaffirm that this action was the intent of the Regional Housing Council. So
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's how I see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have agreement. I appreciate it. Mayor Foster, before I open nominations.
I'm jumping the gun then. I want to thank the current chair for his work, and I would nominate Jim Cooper as chair in this temporary fashion as it is.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. So nominations are open for chair. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Okay, nominations are closed, and I'm willing to serve. So all in favor of me, Jim Cooper, serving as chair of the Regional Housing Council as stated prior to opening nominations, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to serve, and I'm also happy to have someone else do it if they want to. So please, if you're interested, let me know and we can talk and get you doing this in January. Okay, so I think that makes a default vice chair based on our interlocal agreement. So Commissioner Hutchings, assuming you're willing to serve, I'd like to go ahead and nominate you and make a motion for you to be the vice chair. Are you willing?
I am willing and not giving up to the 11th hour, so I'll be involved.
We're glad to have you as long as you can be here. So, okay, so my motion is to elect Commissioner John Hutchings as the vice chair of the Regional Housing Council with the conditions stated prior to nominations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to give you a second here. And
Oh, thank you. I have a second from Councilmember Cox. I apologize. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Commissioner Hutchings. Okay,
Jim?
that takes us to public comment. And so
Could I,
so
before we get past, Jim, before we get past this election thing, I would like to thank Carolyn Cox for serving as the vice chair and for the work that she's done. A lot of, like both of you have had to do, you know, behind the scenes and contacting people, and Carolyn's done a good job of making sure agendas were good. And I just think that both of you have done a good job, but I think she's done a very good job as the vice chair. And I want to thank her for her service in that role.
Yeah, I echo that. We would not be where we are today without Carolyn's work. So thank you very much, Carolyn. And wherever you see yourself in leadership, say it, and we'll get you there.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so that takes us to a quick discussion about public comment. And so when I talked to Tom and other staff after our last meeting, we realized that we kind of perfunctorily, I don't know, we defaulted to having public comment and we didn't really discuss it. And so wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there was no requirement for this group to have public comment by the Open Public Meetings Act. And I defaulted to that because that's what we do in all of the interjurisdictionals and subcommittees that I'm on, have public comment on the agenda. And so I wanted to provide some space for the committee, the council, to talk about whether public comment should be on our agenda. And depending on that decision, we'll start having it at the opening at the next meeting, or we won't. So just wanted to check in and see what folks think. John, did I do that justice? Or Tom, I mean, sorry. Okay.
I think public comment is always appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. I think we could have it on the agenda. I mean, these issues are so pervasive in all of our communities, and there's so many people concerned about housing. And one thing that we've heard is, you know, people are able to comment at city council meetings, but because housing issues are so regional, that there's a desire for folks to be able to comment that has that more regional context to it, particularly people who have comments about housing as a system. It makes sense to me to have a forum where those concerns can be raised.
Carolyn? Oh, you're muted, Carolyn.
Sorry. I totally agree with Michael. I think there's a lot of interest in the formation of this group, and that it would be a big mistake not to allow public comment. I think, you know, for time purposes, we can have a mix of written and, you know, have a limited span of time in the meeting for oral comments so we still get our business done. But, you know, I think we need to be very transparent.
John?
I agree. And it is such a hot topic that's being addressed right across the board. And as long as we have some very distinctive guidelines so that we can still proceed with our meeting and get work done and not get hijacked.
Great. So to me, that sounds like we have consensus. Anything from alternates or staff? Go ahead, Lenny.
I would just add, I mean, I think public comment necessary in government, right? We want to hear from the public. That's who we serve. But I do think we have to be careful and not and limit the amount of time. We have a lot of work to be done at this regional council, and a limited amount of time to do for these meetings. So I do think we just have to be careful and make sure we're limiting that time and keep an eye on it. If it gets out of control, if the time starts taking over the meeting, we can always adjust after fact to either having special meetings for public comment or written public comment. But I think in the beginning it makes sense to have it, and hopefully we can keep it to a some set time frame so that our meetings are still able to be over by 6:30. Because at least a couple of us, Carolyn and myself, have a 7 o'clock council meeting right after this meeting.
For sure. Yeah, no, in fact, what I was going to suggest is that Tom and I'll write something up around what those guidelines will be and send them out and ask folks if they want to make any changes or if they work. So great suggestion, Lenny. Anything else? Okay, so we have consensus. Public comment will be on our agenda moving forward. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Wonderful. So that takes us to the technical team and the working groups. So Tom, do you want to tee this up? Actually, so two things. So Romero has his hand up, and I want to acknowledge that Shelley Slaughter, our Director of Public Health and Social Services, has joined us. So welcome, Shelley. Romero, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I invited Sam Gibboney from the Port of Olympia. She's waiting to be admitted.
Great. Yeah. So Kelly, if you can promote Sam, that would be wonderful. And Tom, what I was going to ask is if you could tee this up, the bigger conversation, and then I'll tee up the shorter update on citing for a minute, and then we can go to the committees themselves and the structure, if that's okay.
Yep. Great. Thank you. So at last month's meeting, one of the things we talked about was the formation of work groups. Because there's a lot of work, a lot of topics that need to be addressed. And so the technical team has been meeting to determine what work groups we think are needed and to start the work of that. So we've identified several work groups that you've seen listed on the agenda that have had a preliminary meeting to propose a purpose for the work group, what's their objective, and then what type of membership we think is appropriate for that group. So that's going to be one of the things we want to talk to you tonight, is to get your input and approval on the membership of the work groups, along with a high level picture of next steps. So really these the work groups have met once in the past month, just to try to start to get organized and determine what direction they want to go. And we want to present that to you tonight to get your feedback, and then next steps and to flush out these work groups so that they can move forward getting into the bulk of their work. So just wanted to spend a few minutes. All of these topics are ones that we know we could spend a half hour, an hour talking about. There's a lot of depth to them. But tonight the real purpose was just to introduce kind of the initial thoughts of each group and the direction they see themselves going.
Great. And so before we get into that structure, though, I think it was really clear at our last meeting that there's a high priority for the citing committee to get going and get moving. And there's a couple of updates around citing that I wanted to make sure folks hear about, and then we can talk about the structure. So Michael, so I just want to, in relationship to the camp that in Tumwater that was on port property is kind of the topic for the moment. And so I'd like to ask Michael and or John to give us an update from the Tumwater perspective, and then we'll ask Sam to give us a short update on the conversations the port is having at the moment. So Michael?
Sure. So I think everybody is probably pretty aware of the situation that was reported on in the paper that was sort of unfolding in the city of Tumwater. And like Jim said, there is some folks living on port property in Tumwater, and there was a request that Tumwater intervene in that situation, and we sent a letter to the port. And one of the things that we requested in that letter was effectively kind of a partnership that we try to work together to address the situation in a trauma-informed, responsive fashion. And I think at the moment now the port is taking those things into consideration, and has also, if I recall from the minutes of the last port meeting, is looking at some properties that could be utilized for some sort of mitigation site along those lines. But John, I think you have some more details, or maybe Sam could update things along those lines. But I believe the port's kind of sort of taking the lead on looking at how to manage that site that's on their property, and examining some of their holdings to that extent.
I don't know that I have much to add to that really matters sort of at this level of the discussion, other than to sort of hand it off to Sam and say one of our asks was that the port engage in the kinds of conversations that are happening with this group, and here is Sam to do that. So with that, Sam.
Welcome, Sam.
Great, thank you. Yes, so at the Monday meeting, the Port Commission gave direction to staff to look at if there are any properties within our holdings that could potentially be offered for use by another jurisdiction or agency, not ruling out some type of nonprofit, to be able to cite some type of a mitigation site. I will be working on that and bringing back the recommendations to the Port Commission. They have tasked me to do that by October 7th. I do want to use this opportunity to make sure that people understand the statutory limitations on the port, and that those are things that will, and statutory as well as federal grant limitations that we face. So I'll first start with the vast majority of the port's holdings in Tumwater are encumbered by FAA grant assurances, and those grant assurances prohibit any type of residential use on those properties. And so that's what, I'll be reaffirming that with the commission to make sure that they understand that, and also they understand the risk of foregoing those or not recognizing those prohibitions, and that includes the loss of any type of future FAA grants and potentially the repayment of FAA grants, which would total about $22 million for the port. So there are federal some very strict federal restrictions on us. We do have a piece of property that is out, and I understand is outside the city of Tumwater's limits, that is not encumbered by FAA restrictions. So that is one that I had informal discussions with John Doan over the last few weeks. That might be something that the commission would be willing to consider. We do need to then would work through the process, and this is where we get into our statutory authority. So the port is a special purpose government with no general government authorities, and that includes no authorities to expend funds or contribute in kind to any type of public safety, health, or health and human services. So the port has, unless we can tie that directly back to an authorized activity under our statute. So we have been able to do that by the donation of some of the containers for the mitigation sites downtown, and other things. So I'm definitely working through those issues. We're trying to keep as broad an interpretation that we can. I think that's what the commission is looking for. But we do have some real limitations on what the port can offer. So we will continue to step forward in the spirit of partnership and community health, and then that's the clear direction that I've received from the commission. And I just want to make sure this group is aware of those kind of foundational constraints that we have.
Great, thank you for those updates. It's really appreciated. Any questions for Tumwater or the port? Joan?
I just wondered, hi Sam, This is Joan Cathey, Tumwater. I just wondered if during this COVID time and during, this kind of emergency type of things, if there was any change in some of those restrictions you have because of health emergencies or, declarations of need or all of those kinds of things. Are there other opportunities, waivers because of the situation?
I do know that for I'm aware of other ports that during this time that have gone beyond their kind of normal limits within our authorized scope of economic development, where we've been able to assist businesses and things and tenants, things that has been something that's a bit out of the norm due to this public health emergency. With regards to any of the other things that I'm not that I'm aware of, I don't, and certainly not with regards to any of the FAA grant assurances. I'm not aware of any change in the status of those restrictions.
Good question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update, and we'll hopefully look forward to a positive outcome of your research, and know that there's people talking about a new piece of property you got yesterday in the newspaper too, about whether that could be used.
A new piece of the ferry. Yes. There's lots of people talking about, we hope not to be in possession of the ferry for very much longer.
That's a good plan for you,
Yeah.
for sure. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Sam. And thanks, Tumwater, for catching us up. It's always a tough situation when you have campers and property owners and neighborhoods. So, okay. So Tom, we need to talk through each one of these and make sure we have membership.
Yeah, so we've got chairs of each of these. So I'm going to have Keith Stahley is the chair of the siting team. So I'll have him update everyone on what that group has done so far and where they're at.
Thanks, Tom. The siting work group did meet on September 10th. Myself, Rick Walk, Mike Matlock, Tom, Webster, Keylee, and Ramiro met for about an hour and a half. We did conclude that we needed additional representation from the county, and Ramiro agreed to ask Josh Cummings to provide us with an individual familiar with the county's planning and zoning processes and regulations. So we're working on that. We also recognize that the port is a significant landowner and player in this realm, and that we should reach out to Sam and touch base with her and start that cooperation. And she's declined to become a member of the work group, but she recognizes the need to work with the work group. So she's agreed that to provide some potential properties and also to evaluate any properties that the committee should identify. So we're looking forward to working with Sam on that. Definitely a good working relationship. Ramiro sort of hit the nail on the head as to what the committee's responsibility is, and that's to find sites. And frankly, to find them as quickly as possible and to bring them forward to this group for evaluation and potential action. I think this weekend and the smoke event that we're currently dealing with only points out the magnitude and reality of the shortcomings of our current shelter system. Keylee and I and Skip from UGM and Meg and others were texting and calling this weekend trying to figure out how to respond to this smoke event and wondering, what to do the next day. We simply do not have a shelter facility right now where we can direct people to reliably, that we have control over how it's being accessed and used. So again, the need is just absolutely urgent. I know there are friends from Providence or associates from Providence on the line this evening as well. They may want to comment. Perhaps we want to let them in as presenters as well, just on their interest in this process. We've heard a great deal from them regarding that. But in the end, we concluded that we need to come back with 3 to 5 sites identified by each jurisdiction to start to build the list of potential short-term and long-term sites that could be used immediately for things like mitigation or safe parking, and sites that could be used in the long term for supportive housing and affordable housing. So we will be pressing forward with that, and I think that's probably enough. So yes, happy to answer any questions that the committee members may have.
Go ahead, Michael.
So at our last meeting, we asked if folks wanted to be members of the various ones, and I recall volunteering for this one for citing. So but I never got an invitation to the September 10th meeting. So is this just a meeting of the technical team representatives who are going to be on the citing team, or was that like a full meeting and maybe I missed the notice or something?
That is entirely up to you and the committee how you want to structure this. I was unaware of your interest there, but we'd be glad to add you to our next meeting if you have an interest there. I know your perspective would be welcomed, but this is definitely, technical work evaluating sites based on, whether or not their zoning capacity and are they adjacent to or near transportation facilities and services, and are there wetlands and environmental issues that need to be resolved, and kind of getting into literally into the dirt, so to speak. But yes, you're certainly welcome to.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else, because we did do like a call for membership on different subcommittees.
It was citing, yeah, and everyone on the call volunteered except me.
And one of the things around the issue of the site, as Keith said, is it's very technical, looking at candidate sites, filtering down to a list of recommended sites, and then the idea was that it would come back to the full council for all of you to look at that point. How do we distill the potential candidate sites down to and what their opportunities are? So there would be a step in process that would come back to the full council, and you all would have that conversation at that time.
Okay.
Lenny?
This is probably a little bit more of a general question, not necessarily for the citing work group, but for the work groups in general. Where do we see alternates fitting into that process then?
Yeah, and I was trying to, we'll have recordings now going forward, so we'll be able to go back and listen. But I think the way I remember that meeting was we talked about having at least one council member or their alternate working with a committee, so almost like a liaison type. And I think it would be good to do that, and I don't think it matters. And even like bringing Sam into citing or inviting Sam, it makes a lot of sense to have other partners or other folks at some of those subcommittees too, because that's a good way to amplify our power. So that's my recollection, Lenny. Joan?
Mine as well.
Go ahead, Lenny. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lenny. Sorry, I cut you off.
I'm sorry. No, I just said that was my recollection as well. I just wanted to clarify and make sure that's where we are. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Joan?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Keith or anybody who's on the siting. In this siting, are you looking at vacant buildings? I mean, it seems like in this COVID time, there's been, loss of businesses and people moving out and different things. I'm just wondering how already constructed structures are part of your looking and possibility.
It's a really good question, and one that the committee started to deal with. Initially, our initial evaluation was on properties that are owned by the government, whether they're owned by the cities or the county or the state or, school district or whatever. But we quickly recognized that that's too narrow of a universe and that we need to expand that. So yes, looking at existing buildings, if we're going to have an immediate impact, we're probably going to need to have a building that's already built. As we are well aware, it takes a couple of years to get a project funded and constructed, probably really more like 3 years to go from funding to construction. So we're going to look at the entire universe, including vacant buildings and vacant properties that are owned by private parties and public property as well.
Great, great, thanks.
So does it make sense that we would put one elected official at a minimum on each committee? And I would say your role is liaison. So if you can't be there all the time or you don't desire to get into the technical weeds, then, let's let our good staff do their work and just kind of be there to help alongside. So it doesn't matter to me either way. So I'm open to what other folks think. John, do you have an opinion? Hutchings, sorry, there's more than one.
No, I'm taking it all in. So I'm not ready to weigh in on that yet.
Okay.
Oh,
Carolyn?
I think it wouldn't hurt. I mean, given our schedules, we're obviously not going to make every meeting, but I think there could be questions that come up that it would be nice to have one of the electeds there to be able to answer.
Sorry.
Thank you.
The dog wants to be on the siting committee.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
From a staff perspective, that your description of the role of liaison, I think, is a really good one and would be beneficial. There's different functions, and having a council liaison there, I think, could be beneficial. So.
So is everyone okay with Michael being the liaison for siting? Anyone want to back him up?
Yeah, anyone else want to join?
Okay, that's yours, Michael.
Okay.
I guess you could recruit a backup if you have to, right?
Okay, Rick, take us to policy. Or Tom, sorry, I don't know why I'm doing that. Wrong name every time. Tom, take us to policy.
So policy, we really, the technical team, and this is exactly the conversation we wanted to have, for the staff to kind of do a little bit of pre-work to think about this. So to come with you to talk about membership, and because we did talk about electeds, having one elected on these groups. So that's was really what we were hoping to achieve tonight. So thank you for that. So policy, as we were talking about how to think about this group, really two, I would say, foundational subjects came up that we figured we needed to kind of tackle before we could tackle bigger policy questions. And one of those around making sure there was common understanding between jurisdictions around various legal issues and terminology and just all the kind of issues, making sure we're all on the same page. So we're not, we're all driving the same bus, so to speak. And then the other one was relationships with people outside the RHC. A lot of questions of how does this group relate to Thurston Thrives and the Housing Action Team and other stakeholders in the community, of really trying to figure out how this group relates to the rest of the world in Thurston County around housing. So wanting to spend some time figuring that out. So that was the two groups under the policy umbrella that we've developed to kind of tackle those two topics. So I'm going to have Keylee is chairing the common understanding team that we've put together and they've met. So I'll let her talk a little bit more about that sub team. Keylee.
My pleasure. All right, so the Common Understanding Work Group, we met on September 11th, our first meeting. Present at that meeting was Brad Medred from Tumwater, Rick Walk from Lacey, myself, and Ariel Benson from Thurston County, and Keith is also on that group but was not able to attend that, that particular meeting. And we really wanted to get together and talk about the vision, purpose, and goals, and then kind of cull what are we talking about? What are the things we want to make sure that we have common understanding on? And I think, you know, just over the last month, there have been conversations about, is DOT going to clear this camp in Lacey, and what does that mean? And the situation at the port with Tumwater, and how Martin v. Boise does or does not impact or connect with whatever jurisdiction. So really wanting to be on the same page for that. So we rambled through some vision and purpose and goals, and Rick Walk offered to kind of put it all into something cohesive, and we're still working it out, but I'm just going to go ahead and read what he wrote. So in order to effectively respond to housing issues as a region, we need to develop common agreement and understanding on the application of laws, legal decisions, terms, and conditions as outlined below, and develop a baseline of rules and policies to respond to encampments, safe parking, and shelters that are applied consistently among Thurston County jurisdictions. So that's kind of where we're coming from. I think we could all agree, you know, just even in this last week, like it would be good having a common understanding of case law, much less terms, being very important. And so the case law that we discussed, of course, was Martin v. Boise, Seattle versus Long, and then the Homestead Act, which is RCW 613, and how all of those relate to each other. So we also considered secondary considerations related to those were, how does Governor Inslee's eviction moratoriums impact this case law and our responses? And then what does it mean when it's private versus public ownership of whatever property? So the case law and then the secondary considerations, we quickly determined that we need to bring these issues in this case law to the eyes and wisdom of each jurisdiction's legal counsel. So we will be inviting our legal counsel, sending a summary of our meeting and asking them to look at this case law and chiming in on their perspective. So we're inviting them to our next meeting. Next, we discussed definitions that don't necessarily need legal counsel, but it would be helpful for us to understand how these terms, what do these terms mean, because they're used, they're terms of art in homeless crisis response. And so those, of course, being the lightning rod of low barrier, housing first, harm reduction. And so bringing in whatever guidelines calls those out. So for instance, Department of Commerce in the Consolidated Homeless Grant guidelines calls out that everyone who is granted through the CHG funds will operate a low barrier program, and spells that out very clearly. What does that mean? Within the definition or that guideline of low barrier from CHG lives housing first principles and harm reduction. So moving forward in that conversation to make sure that when we're languaging this to our respective communities, that we have the tools that we need to really thoroughly explain what those terms mean. Because as we all know, low barrier and low barrier models being a requirement of funding coming from the Department of Commerce means that many of the dollars that go out from the county every year to the homeless crisis response system has that requirement attached to it. So were we to put a new program anywhere in Thurston County, if it's funded through the county, through those funding sources, will have to be a low barrier housing first harm reduction based model. So just wanting to, we'll be working on that. So our next steps, or we discussed, we'd like to invite legal counsel from each jurisdiction, to consider also inviting Port of Olympia to work in this group. So thank you for being here, Sam, Gibboney. And then we're going to, again, just create a summary of this, our first meeting, and send it out. And that's where we ended, was just let's make sure that we get legal to the table by the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thoughts, anyone? So we think we need if silence is consent, then we need a liaison to that committee. Lenny?
I'd be glad to do it.
Great. Okay, you have a liaison, Keylee? Anyone want to back him up? Okay. Looking forward to that great work. It's so important that we have consistency, because most of our residents and businesses don't really think about the geographic lines like we do. So I'm really glad. John?
I really like the fact that Keylee used that term, terms of art, because it really are. There's a lot of terms of art that even all of us don't have a common knowledge of, and the public has their own interpretation of what a lot of those terms mean to them. So to have staff and even run it by legal and have people on board that really know what they're talking about is vital.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, related to that, you know, those I don't know what you called it, hot button words like low barrier, you know, having some context to that, so we know that doesn't mean no barrier and we all use the same words to describe it, or maybe there's a better word that we could decide to use, right? That, you know, that's not as big of a turnoff to people, because I don't think it means what people see in their head when they hear the words. So anything else on common understanding? Okay, so relationships, Tom?
So relationships, I'm chairing that work group, and we met, can't remember what day we met, but it was myself, Keylee, Jacinta Stelchis from the county, Jessica Pollett from Olympia, and Ryan Andrews from Lacey were the staff that met for that. We spent some time, kind of as I indicated before, purpose of this group is really to look at how the Regional Housing Council, both the main body, as well as the technical teams, interact, connect, share information, learn from the different organization stakeholders, experts who are not members of the RHC, but who have knowledge and perspectives that inform and are impacted by the work of the RHC. So what is that information communication flow between the RHC and, you know, the broader community? And in doing that, also wanting to clearly distinguish, you know, what's that relationship when funding is involved, and then what is that relationship for other things when funding is not involved. We spent, you know, a chunk of the meeting kind of going over the history of Thurston County, kind of talking about the home consortium and what the relationship was during the home consortium and how that evolved into the CIP and the HHSE and the housing action teams and Thurston Thrives. And, you know, trying to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of those. You know, what did we learn from that past experience that we should bring forward, both the lessons learned and the successes. So those were kind of what we talked about. And in doing that, we realized, you know, right now it's pretty confusing. If you try to write a diagram of that relationship, is not that easy. So one of the next steps we really talked about for this group was kind of develop a map that reflects the primary stakeholder groups. We might not capture everybody, but the primary stakeholder groups, their roles and connections. We know, for example, the Homeless Housing Hub has a formal role as a local continuum of care. And so we need to kind of make sure that that role is respected and how they relate to this group. So trying to understand those existing roles and connections, and then moving forward to develop a map that proposes what that relationship with the RHC looks like, and how the communication will flow between the RHC and primary stakeholder groups. And then to develop some, I would say, a narrative outline of key principles or practices that kind of support that visual map or so that the RHC will implement that reflect how it sees its relationship with other stakeholders. So in thinking about our membership, we realized we really do need to bring in, want to invite a provider representative, someone from, you know, a provider to bring that perspective from a stakeholder. We also thought it was appropriate to invite someone from Thurston Thrives, whether that's Taylor Agardo or someone else from Thurston Thrives to bring their perspective. So it's not just the RHC dictating to these groups what the relationship will be. We also volunteered Kerry Retland when he comes back for paternity leave to be part of this group. So that's kind of where this group is, just thinking about figuring out those relationships going forward, because we know that will be important for this group to communicate effectively, and so there's clear roles and responsibilities. So happy for questions, thoughts, and to determine who would be a good liaison among the electeds for this group.
Well, it sounds like you're going to meet the minimum contribution of hours next week. You all are doing a lot of meetings. Thoughts about that? Carolyn, go ahead.
A lot of what Tom has described here is communications work. And I don't see communications committee listed among these things. So I wanted to sort of tease that out and see what the thinking is there.
Yeah, so that was definitely, and Keylee and I recognize that because I know Keylee attended the communications group. So I definitely had it on my list to say, oh, we need the communications group also met. And so we did want to give an update on the communications group. And I think there's kind of those relationships. So I think there's a connection there. So I think that's an important point to kind of figure out how, as we think about those relationships, how make sure the communication group is involved in that process as well.
Okay. Well, as long as they're tightly connected, I could liaise between both of those if you'd like.
Thanks for volunteering.
Yeah, that'd be great, Carolyn. Thank you.
Keylee, you had your hand?
I just wanted to say I'm prepared to give an update on the communications team because we met. So it's not on the agenda, but if that fits in, then I'm happy to give that update.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's see if there's anything else. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Tom, you mentioned Taylor Rigardo. Have you spoken with her yet about helping out?
We have not, no.
I think she's
so wanted to bring this to this group, and so.
Yeah, she'd be a good choice.
Okay. Anything else on relationships? Keylee?
Just one more thing. Today I was doing some research, and I think to really highlight the importance of under like this work group. If you go to Thurston Thrives and you look at the housing action team and you look at their vision, their purpose and mission, it looks a lot like the Regional Housing Council. So really needing to work. I'm really excited that this work group is happening.
Yeah.
As the chair of the hat.
Totally. That's something we've acknowledged all along, that we need to figure out those interfaces pretty quickly. So I'm glad this is high on the list. Anything else on that? And then otherwise we'll have Keylee do a quick update on communications before we go through the list that's here. Okay, go ahead, Keylee. Oh, you muted it.
Yeah, I'm notorious for muting. So the communications work group met this Monday. Ann Cook from Tumwater, Megan Porter from Thurston County, Donna Feliciano from Lacey, and Kelly Braceth from Olympia, and myself. I kind of took them through, since they hadn't met in quite some time, almost a year. I kind of gave them an update on where the Regional Housing Council sits and discussing the work groups, and that there is a role within the ILA for there to be a communications work group alongside the technical team. I walked them through just a really high level overview of the ILA, just to make sure that, and just in case they hadn't had a chance to look at it. So we talked through that. We identified and had a conversation around other agencies and entities that will need to be invited, or at least have a conversation with them about whether they want to be involved. There was a conversation around the state and what's their role. So Department of Transportation, Department of Enterprise Services, and Providence, and how are these agencies, how do we bring them into the communications part? So one of our next steps was that Megan Porter would be reaching out to those entities and talking to their communications folks. We decided they had a discussion about who would be chair and co-chair, and so Megan Porter will act as the chair of the communications team, and Donna Feliciano is acting as co-chair. I was asked to provide a bulleted summary for a news release once the ILA is complete, and I did so, and Megan has a draft of that news release. So, and that just came to me yesterday, I believe. Our next meeting is to be determined. It felt as if this group had, there was a sense that they felt as if they were an as-needed group. But if that is not the will of the Regional Housing Council, then I can relay that to them, since they are not here. I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Carolyn is willing to serve as the liaison there as well. So that we've got that. Brad, you just unmuted?
Yes, I did. Sorry.
Oh, I thought that meant you had something to say. Sorry.
No, I'm all excited about the next topic, so I'm.
Oh, you're just, okay, you're ready. Okay. Anything else on communications? Okay, thank you, Keylee. Okay, so evictions must be Brad. Tom, you need to tee it up, or we'll go? Okay, go right to Brad. Go ahead.
Well, I am playing the role of Amy Buckner tonight. Amy was unable to make the meeting. She has a land use committee meeting at this very same time. Amy is the co-chair along with Carrie Rutland, who was out and will be back in October. Keith Stahley was also there from the city of Olympia. We had Ariel Benson from the county and Jessica Brandt from the city of Lacey. We were very fortunate because Amy Buckner had brought to us a team charter form, which I guess the city of Olympia has been using. And that really helped to guide the discussion of what exactly we wanted to accomplish, and more importantly, what we needed to bring back to the RHC for further guidance. We talked about a purpose statement. We know it's improved regional collaboration and coordination of approaches to preventing residential evictions so that the residents of the county do not end up homeless in the first place. We talked about our scope, which includes sharing information about regional and other efforts related to what jurisdictions in the RHC can do to mitigate the likelihood of residential evictions, coordinate and collaborate on policy issues with the aim to improve consistency, policies at the regional level, provide ideas and collective technical feedback upon clear direction from the RHC steering committee about what they are looking for, which are for this committee in line with the goals of the RHC, and then also coordinate with a rental housing work group of HAT to bring their ideas forward to the RHC and advise how to implement those ideas. I think the key thing that we came away with in terms of the scope of the committee is we're really a coordinating bunch. We don't need to generate ideas. There's plenty of ideas out there. We don't necessarily need to generate the data. There's more than enough data out there to support the approaches we need. We really need, I think, to have a discussion with the steering committee about what exactly they would like our group to focus on for the eviction issue. And that's because, one, as you're aware, the RHC has very limited time and resources, and this is a very big issue. And we had a lot of discussions about not wanting to become a policy setting group. We were more interested in implementing policy that's passed down from the RHC. So with that, I want to go through our goals very quickly and then ask for input from the steering committee on our next steps. Our goals, we understand the state of the problem, understand what others are doing, improving our regional coordination. We're looking to address the immediate issues related to the COVID-19 first in regard to evictions, keeping in mind that there are broader tenant protection issues related to housing affordability that we need to address as well. And obviously we want to prevent, what can we do immediately to prevent people from ending up homeless in the first place? So with that, I would like to open it up to discussion. First of all, for a liaison from the RHC to serve with us. We're going to intend to meet again in a couple weeks, so we have something else to bring back to the October RHC meeting. But we really want more direction, I think, from the steering committee on what are the most important things we should be pursuing, and so we don't waste our time and effort on something that the general steering committee doesn't think is useful.
Okay. Thoughts? Volunteers?
Well, I guess the part where I'm sort of struggling with is sort of the chicken and egg question of does the RHC, does this body direct that subcommittee to look at specific things, or does that subcommittee come up with specific things that we then vet further and then make recommendations for adoption for our jurisdictions or whatever? Like to give like a hypothetical, because you brought it up. So like tenant protections or something. Let's say we as a group here decide that that's important and that we would like a set of recommendations for us to vet and then potentially recommend to our various jurisdictions to adopt so that we can get a uniform policy across jurisdictional lines, because we all know that that will smooth implementation. so is that something that we would then direct this subcommittee to work on, or is the subcommittee directing us to sort of take that on in this committee of the whole?
Well, I think we started down the direction of suggesting a path for direction, if that makes sense. And that's first of all, recognizing that we're going to have an issue with the COVID-19 coming up very shortly. And it's above, in my mind, I think it's above and beyond a set of tenant protection things. I think it also involves and resources. I mean, we did talk about county available resources, but even with all the federal grant funds, that's extremely limited once you start to calculate all the people that might need it and all the number of months. So I guess what I'm trying to suggest is we might have a bigger issue on our hands, or to consider anyway, than what we may have originally envisioned. That if we want to work together to deal with these issues, what else should we really be doing? And do we really need to be looking at spending money rather than making, in my mind, code changes or some things like that? So I think that's where I think Amy was coming from when she started to have the issue with, what are we exactly doing? Are we setting policy? Or are we recommending? And that's why we wanted to come back and have a further discussion.
Other thoughts? I mean, it seems pretty clear that COVID is the task at hand today. And then, you know, kind of maybe rolling that into the bigger picture conversations. I like the idea of having it operate almost like a policy think tank, where here's the kind of list of things that we want to look at, help us narrow it down and figure out where the best places for us to coordinate regionally are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I think that not all of us are going to want to do all of the things that would come up in this category, or have the time and bandwidth. So that's just my thoughts. And Amy's at that land use committee meeting because Olympia's got a set of policy proposals on the table. So, Joan?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we know as an ORHC group, or if this eviction subcommittee knows what each of the jurisdictions, including the county, if anybody has done anything so far on this. I mean, have we discussed these things at our council levels? Does each jurisdiction have anything in place? And it kind of is, how do we coordinate what we already have, if we have anything? And what kind of discussion do we need to have around it as we move on and into the COVID situation? And, you know, because some people are even confused by the word tenant protections. I mean, that's different than eviction. And so anyway, I'm just wondering, like, has Olympia or Lacey, or, you know, worked on any of these things? Do any of us have anything in place?
So
can I just suggest, for the sake of time, that we talk about that being a role of the committee to help us tell that story, rather than getting into it right now?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I'm sorry. I was throwing that out as it seems like that would be something that could be coordinated, and we all could know that, which I think would be helpful.
Yeah, with the current landscape.
Yeah, and Councilmember Cathey, we definitely went through what all the jurisdictions are currently doing. We did focus a lot on discussions of what the county has been doing in terms of dispersing funds for eviction prevention, which is a huge, huge thing. We also touched on some of the tenant protection discussions that all the other jurisdictions have been having. So I think, again, we have a good basis for that. It's just, what do we want to do collectively is probably the question.
And I think I'm suggesting to help do that in the, you know, long or short run here, is for each of us to know what the other jurisdiction has already done, or what the conversation or the whatever is done. It helped me think it through more if I knew where other you know, folks are coming from. That's what I was trying to say.
And we can share that with everyone.
Yeah, so Brad, maybe for your next agenda item, give us the current landscape, and we can have some brainstorm about what topics fit in this role or in this committee. Does that sound good?
It sounds appropriate to me. I think we can definitely take that back and come back with something in time.
Okay. Who would like to serve as the liaison to the eviction committee? I can do that one.
We have a uniform, so if you're okay with that.
Yeah, as long as it involves shorts.
Yeah. We'll talk afterwards.
All right, cool. Okay, so I'm going to move us a little bit quicker because we're starting to get close on time. So we have funding and RFP committee, Tom.
Yeah, so this is a committee that has not met yet. So we have not established a group, but this is going to be an important one as we come up for our RFP and lots of funding sources coming into the county. So, and this is one where I think it is appropriate to have probably more than one elected official. Thinking back to our history with HHSE, we used to spend 2 hours a month kind of preparing for kind of the funding round. That's not going to be feasible within the RHC, kind of our hour and a half meetings once a month. So looking for almost a parallel, something more similar to the HHSE that can really focus on funding questions, looking at funding sources, what are the priorities that we want to develop. So looking to establish who wants to participate on that group moving forward. That will be led by, kind of staff and other jurisdictions, but we will need a strong elected representation on that committee because it really is looking at funding priorities in the RFP process moving forward. So that's what hoping to figure out tonight, and then very soon I'll want to convene that group to start those discussions.
Okay. So I guess my only comment before I open it up is I would want to make sure we don't have a quorum of the primaries at that committee. So it would be okay to have 2 primaries and a couple of alternates, but we don't want to have 3 of the 5 primaries, if that makes sense to everyone.
I'm willing to be one of those.
I was just going to nominate Joan.
Okay, Joan.
I'd like to be one of them. Not yeah.
Hutch, can you help it get going?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I was thinking about the consistency, but yeah, you bet.
Hutch and I have done this before.
Yeah, that's exactly why I asked him. And then you guys can help us set the stage for the RFP coming up.
Yeah.
When he goes, I go.
And I was going to nominate you as well, or suggest you would do a step up. So thank you.
So anyone else want to, Carolyn?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, so that's 2 primaries. Anyone else, or is 3 good?
Mayor Foster knows a bit about this.
He's a primary, so I don't want to do it. I don't want to do that. Do we have an alternate?
I was going to say Renata isn't on one.
Oh yeah, let's ask Renata. I will do that since she's been doing it. That's great. And then I just realized, do we have an alternate in South County, JW?
I don't know yet if I have one from the other mayors. We'll have to keep talking with them, but
Okay.
yeah, I don't have one from my council that I could use.
Okay. Great. And so I would just ask that the electeds at that table focus on process, because I don't want to contaminate where we got with having a really good technical team evaluation of proposals and then a recommendation. So I know, so you all discuss that and figure out how the best way to work is, but that's just the thought that's on the top of my mind. Okay. Anything else on funding and RFP? Tom, when will the RFP need to be out?
I will need to be out in February.
Okay.
February.
Okay. Carolyn?
I'm sorry. I was just saying February.
I'd be willing to step down if JW wants to step in. That way, Yelm has a voice in there, and it also gives the South Counties a voice on that group.
Well, thank you, Carolyn, and I'd be happy to serve on that.
But with that, how about Joan and JW? Now I back up.
I think we need both
Does that
of you.
work? Okay then.
Let's
Okay.
do it as the trio for now.
Okay.
Okay.
And we'll have to shake it up in January anyway. So
Yeah.
unfortunately. Okay.
I mean, I'd be glad to lend any, without compromising the group with too many of us there. I'd be glad to help in whatever way I can.
Okay.
I've been involved with this for almost 3 years now and picked up a little bit.
Cool. Okay, so Keith and I will reach out to Councilmember Rollins, and otherwise we're set for that group. Okay. Thank you very much. Wow, right on time. Okay, so I hate having time on the agenda, Tom, but I'm doing my best. So let's talk 1406.
Yeah, so this is, just wanted to follow up from last month's conversation. There was a discussion of coming up with a 1406 ILA, but there was also discussion of immediate need. And so the proposal was mentioned of having jurisdictions utilize their 1406 revenue this year as they see fit, and that developing an ILA that would begin January of 2021 going forward for resources being pooled, but that each jurisdiction would, in a sense, control their own 1406 for this year, for the 2020 year. I think folks wanted to go back to their jurisdictions, mull on that a little bit. So we just wanted to close the loop on that discussion to see if that was the consensus of the group to move forward with that plan, or if we needed to revisit the 1406 funding until we can put an ILA in place.
Joan, I saw your hand going up and it froze. Are you still with us? Okay, we'll let her catch back. Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
No, I was just taking off my glasses.
Got it. Sorry. It's stuck with your hand in midair.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so is everyone still on that page where we put out our 2020 $1406 as jurisdictions on our own, and then we write an ILA that starts January 1?
I think we're so far in the year now, it would be foolish to try to hold things up for an ILA for 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. I haven't spoken directly with Pete about that. I'm not sure if you have, John, but I think that's where we're at still.
Do we have any legal obligations to get money out by a certain time or not? No, okay.
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay, good.
I think we have political obligations.
Well, right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so hearing no dissent, each of the all of the jurisdictions that have it will do their 1406 of 2020 on their own, and then the team will work on an ILA to bring back to the jurisdictions that have 1406 that begins in January. Okay. Anything else on 1406? Hey, we're gonna get done early. This is cool. Okay, so I'm just gonna then I'm just gonna, and Tom, for the future, can you put a good of the order at the end of the agenda, just so we have that. I have one good of the order item, and I wanna just invite, Kelly, if you could bring Angela Mackey in as a panelist. I had a meeting this week with, or Keith Stahley and I had a meeting this week with Angela and met the new CEO at Providence, and it was a very positive conversation oriented on partnership, and Providence has some pretty exciting things to say and a resource that they'd like to put on the table, I think primarily to be used by the siting committee, but will interface with almost all of the conversation that we've had today, I think. So Angela, are you with us?
I am here.
Great. So I don't have to read your notes. We have time. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you're thinking.
So Providence wants to partner with all of our jurisdictions on ending homelessness in our community. We want to look at short-term and long-term plans of what we can do to help out in this space. We would like to bring in Community Solutions, which is a nonprofit organization. It's a national nonprofit. We would like to partner with them for a multi-year strategic partnership to bring in a program called Built for Zero. Built for Zero is a program where Community Solutions would come in, partner with our different agencies, look at ways that we can end homelessness for certain populations. So they come in and help us segment the homeless population and then help us build plans around homelessness in our communities. And then also we want to look at long-term plans. What can Providence do to help our community and partner in a long-term way? And so we are bringing in the housing arm of Providence, and they're looking at what they can do to bring more housing into our community in the next probably 3 to 5 years. So we've already launched into a couple of different feasibility studies, and we'll be looking at how we can bring more supportive housing into the community.
Thank you, Angela. Questions or comments for Angela? Keylee?
Thank you. I would just want to make sure that if that the homeless crisis response system, there's various ways that you can plug in, but the homeless crisis response system and all the providers that attend the housing action team and the homeless housing hub and various other bodies that inform policy and support each other moving through the strategies of the 5-year plan, that the 5-year plan, homeless crisis response plan, that Providence be in alignment with those strategies, so as not to undermine the current strategies for the homeless crisis response system.
Absolutely. We want to come in as a partner. We want to come in and meet with all the different entities, various agencies, find where we can partner and plug Community Solutions into those conversations. So we have met with the City of Olympia. We are looking forward to meeting with our other jurisdictions. I believe today we got a meeting on the calendar, a couple different meetings on the calendar actually with the county. So we will be sharing this moving forward and absolutely want to partner. We don't want to hinder anything that's going on. We just want to add.
I think the thing that's cool about this is that there's, I think, a big opportunity to think about, as we're thinking about the relationships, how do we bring other employers and other, bigger organizations that are non-governmental to the table to help with the solution? Because, if we don't have the private sector helping, we're not going to get anywhere. So I hope this all works out, and I'm really, really appreciative of the place where Providence is today. So thank you, Angela.
And thanks for inviting me to speak.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? Romero?
Just one comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. And I was just reflecting back today on September 2019, when the first meeting of this group came to be. It's been a little over a year, perhaps a year, and how far we have come. And just seeing the dynamics of this meeting and getting ready to sign a local agreement and start looking for actionable items. Kudos to you all. I know that a year is a year, but a lot has been accomplished. So thank you all.
Thank you for that.
Well, and to Romero's point, I'd really like to thank our technical teams as well, because they have just done yeoman's work, and we wouldn't be where we are without them. So thank you.
Agreed. Anything else? Okay, so I think we've gotten through a lot of the process stuff, and I would expect that our next agenda will be starting to get into the meat of these topics a little bit. And I know that everyone at this table wants to be in action mode. So I think that's hopefully starts to become our next step. So with that, thank you. Oh, John, go ahead.
Is our next meeting August the 10th?
Yeah, it's pretty funny, isn't it? I'm guessing this is an old document that was reused.
Just want people to get lost on that.
So that everyone should have gotten a new appointment from Nicole this afternoon. And then the way this will work is you'll get an email with your panelist link that's specific to you before every meeting. And I think the system automatically sends a reminder out just about an hour before the meeting. So keep an eye out for those. And then Tom will shoot out a link for us once the Thurston County website page is up for the RHC. And that's where our public will be able to interface and partners will be able to interface and keep an eye and comment on what we're doing. So thank you again. I cannot echo enough the thanks to staff and all of you for getting us where we are, and look forward to what we can do together. So JW?
Jim, you have a message from Angela in chat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We meet on the, is this the third Thursday? Yes.
Yeah,
We meet on the
Kelly's on it.
third Thursday at 5 o'clock.
October 15th.
October 15th. Thank you, Rick. Anything else? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.